The greatest radio show in America. This is Griff Jenkins, your humble correspondent from the D.C. Bureau on Fox News, filling in for the great Brian Kilmeade on Brian Kilmeade's radio show. Day 2 of getting the full Brian Kilmeade experience. Just did 3 hours of Fox and Friends in the morning, and then 3 hours of this great radio show. It is an honor always to be in this chair and filling in for Brian while he is taking a much-deserved time off. And I want to get right into the topic that I know is top of mind for President Trump, and that is the tariffs. At midnight, the tariffs kicking in, bringing some $150 billion into the U.S., and in about $30 billion in just the last month or so. And remember when all of the naysayers were saying that we were going to be thrust into a recession, that inflation would skyrocket, the markets would tank. Well, guess what? That's not happening and has not happened. And what we have seen instead is deal after deal that the deal maker in chief, as he's starting to be called, Donald Trump, gets more and more trade deals. And I want to play for our listeners before we go to our great guest, Drew Greenblatt, who is a steel manufacturer, just a little bit of President Trump talking about tariffs, saying we're only getting started. Cut one.
We've really just started. This is just in its infancy. So we have a great country. We have a country that is going to be very rich. It's a country that we're very proud of, but it's going to be very rich. And it's companies like Apple, they're coming home. They're all coming home. And we want them to come home. They have to come home. We're going to treat them really well.
All right, let's go to our guest, Drew Greenblatt. He is the CEO of Marlin Steel. In fairness, I met Drew in 2016 and interviewed him at his steel plant near Baltimore, where he was deciding whether Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton would be best. He's since expanded, wildly successful now with plants in Indiana and Michigan as well. Drew, how are you doing, my friend?
Hello, good morning. Excited to be on the Brian Kilmeade Show with Griff.
Hey, Drew, it's great to have you. I want to get your reaction. Obviously, tariffs went into effect at midnight. How is it impacting you as a actual American steel manufacturer?
So we are a fabricator, and we're in Baltimore. As you mentioned, we're also in Indiana and Michigan, and we're thrilled with these tariffs. Finally, we got a situation where we have an opportunity, our factory workers have an opportunity to thrive and prosper. Why? Because we have a level playing field. This is fabulous news for the American factory worker. I mean, tonight I'm going to go to the Ravens-Colts game. Think about how unfair it would be if the referees schemed and made it 21-0 before the Ravens even got on the field. That's what we've been dealing with for the last 50 years, Griff. So we really have a fabulous opportunity finally because of the new policies. Our American factory workers here in Baltimore, Indiana, Michigan can now export all over the world, and we have an opportunity to grow and prosper like never before. This is a wonderful time for America. You're going to see the re-industrialization of America. It's a tremendous, wonderful experience.
You know, Drew, I gave you a shout out on Fox and Friends talking to Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, who clearly understands these things very well. And I said that, you know, you have talked about the re-industrialization of America. He said it'll take some time. It won't happen overnight, but that the conditions are set for that. Take me a little bit more into what he means by that.
I think that's a good point. I mean, you can't build a factory in a day or a week, okay? It takes time. But what's going to happen is people are now going to start scouting out land, putting up buildings. They're going to start, hiring HVAC guys and roofing contractors to start getting things accomplished. They're going to start buying equipment. Think about it. If you're a Japanese factory owner or a German factory owner, you have a terrible hand. You've been dealt a terrible hand. The energy costs are out of control. Your taxes are very, very high. Just brutal regulations in these countries, England, Paris, Germany, everywhere. And then you look at America, and you got this opportunity to ship into the biggest natural market in the world, richest consumer market in the world, and now there's a 15% tariff to get there. You're going to say, to heck with that. I'm not going to build a new factory in France. I'm not going to build a new factory in Japan. I'm going to build the next factory in America. And that's fabulous for the American factory worker, because what they're going to do is they're going to get opportunities to work at these new Japanese factories in America, or French companies or German companies. They're going to come to America. And the beauty of this is the local box company is going to be able to ship to them, because you're not going to buy a Japanese box to ship out of an American factory, right? And they're going to buy from the local pallet company. People are going to get their oil change at the local gas station, and they're going to buy hopefully baskets from Marlin. So it's going to be a win-win-win for the American factory worker. It's a tremendous time to be in the American manufacturing industry.
And Drew, you saw obviously big announcement at the White House yesterday. Tim Cook of Apple making an announcement that he's adding an additional $100 billion with a B to investments, going to make basically all of the Apple iPhone glass products that you have. You see the glass part of the screen in Kentucky. What's your reaction to that?
This is fabulous, and this is dovetails with exactly what I'm saying. I mean, Tim Cook's a crazy smart guy, and he said to himself, it makes financial sense not to build this in China. It makes financial sense not to build this in India. The wise play, and this is a smart guy with a lot of money, is to build in the USA. Thank God. And what's happening is that Tim Cook's not the only smart person making these decisions. Tim Cook is a leader, because he's been so successful for decades. What's going to happen is many other leaders are going to be making the same wise decision. And that plant in Kentucky is going to be hiring a lot of people. They're going to get paid really well, and they're going to get great benefits, and it's going to help the local communities thrive. This is a blessing for Kentucky. It's a blessing for our nation, but it's going to happen many times. There's not going to be all these news articles. The mainstream media is missing all of this. And this is an exciting time to be in, and we're in the front seat of the American reindustrialization.
I thought it was fascinating, Drew, to see the president's real deal making happening when it came to these chips and semiconductors. To your point, exactly how he wants it to work. He said, look, we're going to place 100% tariff on chips and semiconductors unless you build them in the U.S., and then there's zero.
Right. So right now we buy 70% of our chips from Taiwan, right? That's madness, because China is jonesing to take over Taiwan. And they've been saying it, and they've been explicit, and they've been, doing these naval maneuvers and everything. It would be a debacle for this poor little democracy of Taiwan to get stepped on by China. Well, if that happens, we're going to lose 70% of all chips coming into America. That's an untenable situation. So the new policies are so very wise. We got to make things here in America so that we're not beholden to outsiders. I'm talking about critical things. I'm not talking about T-shirts, and I'm not talking about, blue jeans or something like that. I'm talking about critical things like silicon chips, like steel, like boats. We got to make that here in America. And if we do, we'll be more resilient if, God forbid, there's some adversary that tries to pull a fast one on us.
And you can get your jeans, by the way, in America as well at American Eagle. Just ask Sydney Sweeney about that. True. She'll tell you all about that. But I digress. Just in the minute I got left with you, Drew, I know you have called this the reindustrialization of America, which I think is so spot on and so poignant. People can understand that. But what else do you believe will be the legacy of President Trump on American business and manufacturing?
Well, I think it's a multi-pronged approach. The energy is going to get cheaper because we're going to be opening up and using more of our precious resources that have been put out to pasture. Well, now we'll be able to exploit them. So energy prices will come down, which is a great thing. We're going to have more nuclear, which is also very cheap and no carbon. There's other positives. There's going to be less regulations. Foolish regulations that tied up business people are going to melt away. We're also going to see much better tax policy. Again, we want those Japanese and German factory owners to say, to heck with building in our countries. The right and wise decision is to build here.
Right
and
here.
It's a collection of all these wonderful policy shifts. They're going to cause this huge opportunity for the factory workers. They're going to get so many opportunities. The wages will raise, and there's going to be a lot of career certainty, a lot of comfort to be in the manufacturing profession moving forward.
It's going to be something to witness. Drew Greenblatt, the CEO of Marlin Steel, and in full disclosure, a friend who I think really understands what's happening out there because he's on the front lines. Drew, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And in studio with us now, what a treat. It is RNC Chairman Michael Whatley, and as you may have heard, a candidate for Senate in North Carolina. Mr. Chairman, it's great to have you here.
It's great to be with you, sir.
I want to talk about your Senate bid. It's so exciting, and I know it's only about a week old. But first, I can't bring you in here and not take the opportunity to have you put your RNC hat on and talk to me about these runaway Democrats. Tomorrow's a deadline. The Attorney General Kim Paxton there is putting real pressure along with Governor Abbott to make them come back. They have unfinished business aside from redistricting, like the flood relief that's so desperately needed, along with some other issues that are hanging out there. But yet these Democrats have fled to a number of places, but mainly to Illinois, which is among the most Democrat redistrict state in the country. I think 14 of 17 seats are Democrats, yet Trump won 44% there. So they're not represented in that state. Not sure how it works out. But you're also hearing, Mr. Chairman, talk of maybe Maryland or California or New York may redistrict. In fact, Vice President Vance is in Indiana. Maybe that's going to be happening. What do you make of all this?
Look, a couple things, right? I think first off, when you see the Democrats right now, and they're in the face of the American people who want this country to go in a particular direction, and they don't get what they want, what do? They take their ball and they go home. Or in Texas's case, they take their ball and they go to Illinois, right?
Yeah.
You know, so it is remarkable to me that we're seeing them over and over and over again without any agenda whatsoever anywhere in the country. They're just playing obstructionist. They just want to slow things down. They just want to shut it down. I mean, look what the Democrats did in the Senate, looking at 150 of President Trump's nominees that they do not want to confirm because they do not like the president's agenda. They're gonna do everything they can to obstruct the agenda moving forward in the Senate. So they left. They went on vacation. They didn't do, a nominations package, which they've done, before every August recess for forever. So we're seeing the Democrats, their only actions right now, rather than come up with a philosophy that is going to work with the American people, rather than have an agenda that is going to work for the voters, it's obstruct, right? So that's certainly what they're doing. And of all places to go. To Illinois, really. I mean, the most gerrymandered state in the entire country.
Well, they also went to Massachusetts,
Absolutely.
which there are 0 Republicans in the Senate or the House.
I did love the conversation about, well, maybe we'll do redistricting in Maryland or in Massachusetts. I'm like, to what?
Yeah, to what?
Really,
You've already got
have none.
all the Democrat seats.
Connecticut, 0, right?
Yeah. Let me change gears because
But real quick, just if I may,
Yeah.
the other thing that I think that we need to be focused on here right now is that truly. When we talk about all of the fights, all of the agendas, and the elections that are coming up there, what's going to matter in this election is the overall environment. It's going to be the economy. It's going to be the border. It's going to be our standing in the world, because that's what President Trump ran on. That's what he won on. He is keeping the promises that he made. And right now, the voters are looking at the president's agenda and the Democrats' agenda, which is why President Trump is over 45, 50% in the polls, and Democrats are at 20% in the polls. Ultimately, that's going to be the biggest issue that the voters are going to be taking a look at, not all these gerrymandering fights around the country.
And that is why, Michael Whatley, I believe you are the most successful RNC chairman that I know I've witnessed since I moved to Washington in the mid-'90s, because you understand voters don't give a damn about gerrymandering and redistricting. They care about those issues, their pocketbook, the economy, the border, their security, as you mentioned, and of course our standing in the world with so many things happening right now. We'll see, too, if President Trump can actually end the war in Ukraine with the meeting with Putin. Wow, such a fascinating time with high stakes. Let me shift gears, though, because you're running for Senate. And speaking of President Trump, you get a call and he encourages you to run. Take me into that call. And how do you say no?
Well, you don't. I mean, frankly, you just don't, right? And it's thrilling. It's very exciting. I mean, North Carolina is the marquee Senate race in the entire country. I grew up in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. I am a son of middle-class America, right? My dad was an accountant. My mom was a librarian. I delivered newspapers and I mowed lawns and I went to church and I played sports. And, North Carolina and really America have given me an amazing opportunity. I paid my way through college and law school, was able to build a great career. I'm married. I've got a great family, and everything that North Carolina America gave me, I think we need to give back. And those are the values I think we need in the Senate, from North Carolina. And so, the opportunity that I have at the RNC is how do we win an advanced conservative agenda? Right, a pro-America agenda, a common sense agenda. And we see President Trump and the congressional Republicans, the Senate Republicans doing that every day. How do I become part of that voice? Because in North Carolina, the biggest issues that matter are the economy. It's our kids and our communities. Are they going to be safe? North Carolina has more soldiers, veterans, and military families per capita than any state in the country. Are we going to be a strong country? North Carolina is going to be the tip of the spear there. And if you think about, our economy is based on farming. It's based on small businesses. It's based on banking. It's a true microcosm for the country. And so the issue sets that we are looking at nationally right now are the exact issue sets that really matter in North Carolina. And I feel like we're in a really, really good position to win this race and give President Trump an ally in the Senate, and also to make sure that North Carolina is going to have a strong conservative voice in the Senate.
Well, and you are going to be one tough candidate to beat, and you really did. I mean, after covering North Carolina for quite some time, it certainly is the absolute microcosm, from the military to the, coast to the internal rural areas. Let me ask you this. Should you win, what do you want to do when you get to Washington?
Well, I want to fight every day for every family and every community across North Carolina. And the issue sets that North Carolina is going to be dealing with are very familiar, right? I mean, we need a stronger economy. We need to make sure that our kids and our communities are going to be very, very safe. And I really do think that the military presence is going to be very important for us. But I want to be that voice, right? I grew up in rural North Carolina, and I think that really, and I live right outside of Charlotte now, so when I was the state party chair, I would do all 100 counties every year. And it's 65,000 miles in my truck, but it is a great state and it needs a voice in the Senate.
We got to leave it there. RNC Chairman Michael Whatley, thank you for taking time, and I want you to promise you'll come back on that campaign trail on the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Absolutely, guarantee it. Thanks, sir.
And now we have the pleasure of welcoming the U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, to this program. Mr. Secretary, thank you for taking time.
Well, Griff, great to be with you, and thank you for filling in for Brian. You've got a storied history in news reporting, and it's fun to be with a pro like you on the radio this morning.
Oh, you were so kind. You were so kind, Mr. Secretary. And I've told the listeners I've started in radio in the 90s and in the early 2000s and worked for great folks like Lieutenant Colonel Ollie North and the late, great Tony Snow, that was George W. Bush's press secretary when he had a radio show on Fox. And it's just a real treat. And also, to be able now to have not only a front row seat to history, but to make history with people like you, the former North Dakota governor, but now the Interior Secretary, because as we look at 200 days of President Trump's administration, you have taken very significant historic action at the Department of Interior, much of which many thought might not even be possible. Walk me through some of the accomplishments.
Well, first of all, President Trump, first 200 days, I mean, what a joy and how much fun working for this guy. He's a man on a mission, and his mission is as simple as making America great again. Promises made, promises delivered. But the ones at the Department of the Interior that we get to work on, of course, are starting with energy, which is the U.S. largest energy producer in the world. But we've been strapped by the last 4 years, the Biden administration trying to choke out this industry. And and cut back on reliable, affordable energy, which is energy is a component of everything we eat, the car you drive, the food on your table, the clothes on your back. It's a component. President Trump said he would break the back of the record inflation, the highest we'd had in 40 years, and here we are 200 days in, and we're already back to 2% inflation and likely, heading lower than that. So it's just amazing what he's gotten done, and he said he was going to bring peace to the world. He's ending wars, and part of the reason he's ending wars is because of Americans' energy dominance, where he understands that we should be selling energy to our friends and allies, both in the Pacific and Europe, so that they're not buying it or dependent on our adversaries. And so it's just the execution has been crisp and fast, and he's again with the one big beautiful bill, which has got something in there for like every American, whether if you're working on for a wage hour and you're getting no tax on tips, if you're on Social Security and you got no tax on Social Security, and the deregulation that is happening across all these cabinet agencies is taking literally trillions with a T of cost out of the economy for private sector people. So if you've got lower taxes, lower regulation, winning trade deals every day, ending wars, this is a formula for, as President Trump says, the golden age of abundance. America's headed in towards a boom time with the policies that he's fighting to put in place at record speed.
Mr. Secretary, it's so fascinating because I know I've heard you say before that you at the Interior Department are taking really this, quote, common sense approach to energy policy. And as President Trump has pointed out, energy policy, at the end of the day, that's the big one. That one really matters, certainly on the global stage. But I do, when the producer said, hey, we might have an opportunity to interview Secretary Burgum, would you like to? I said, oh my gosh, I'd love to. And they said, why? I said, because when I was covering President Trump's trip over to sign that EU deal in Scotland, he on several occasions expressed his total disdain for windmills. He really doesn't like those windmills. Did you have any idea before you took the job that he had, such disdain for windmills? And more seriously, there's actually steps that you have taken at Interior to roll back some of the previous administration's wind efforts.
Well, yes, that was not a secret about how President Trump felt about windmills, but part of it is the not just the look. And particularly offshore wind, which again, even in New Jersey, 80% of people in New Jersey that live on the coast are opposed to offshore wind. People don't like all of the things that come with it, whether it's the disruption of fisheries, dead whales on the beach, killing of waterfowl, and migratory birds. There's a lot of things to not like, but President Trump is a curious person. He asks questions, and he's talking to energy executives, when he was campaigning this time around, and they privately told him we wouldn't be doing any of this stuff if it weren't for the tax subsidies. And he's like, why would Americans be paying for intermittent, unreliable, and therefore expensive? It is a big lie that wind is cheap, because wind wouldn't exist without taxpayer subsidies. And then they want to put the wind towers in places that are very expensive to build, like offshore, or very distant from where the power is needed, like in a state like my home state, where there's, wind farms were built, which are really not harvesting wind, they're harvesting tax subsidies. But then the taxpayer is also on the hook, because now you've got to build transmission lines to get that power from these remote places to where the load is needed. And in the report that we just put out last week from Interior, because one of the actions we took last week was stopping this massive Lava Ridge project in Idaho, an onshore project that was going to occupy over 54,000 acres. 1 acre of land for a natural gas plant or a nuclear plant can produce versus the 54,000, for a wind farm or an offshore, where Biden had pre-approved 3.5 million acres of offshore on the northeast coast of America. These things are so land inefficient, and part of the job of the Interior, part of the law that I'm supposed to follow, that I will follow as the secretary, is to multiple use doctrine. What is the best and highest use for the land? And if we can generate reliable, affordable, cheaper electricity on 1 acre versus 4,000 to 5,000 acres needed to get the equivalent amount of wind, it's not good for wildlife. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for birds and mammals. Not good for ranchers. Not good for timber production. All the other things that we should be doing on these national assets called the lands, not our national parks, but the national lands that were put away for the benefit and the use of the American people.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned the Lava Ridge Wind Project, Mr. Secretary, because, you know, as you point out, rightfully so, that was this enormous, unpopular 1,000 megawatt wind facility in southern Idaho. But we also learned that it was snuck in at the very final days of Biden's term. It was a very late thing. And now, as we watch on Capitol Hill, the AutoPin investigation, you wonder whether or not it was, the Green New Deal folks inside the White House under the previous administration that were really driving this, and whether that Biden even was aware, fully cognizant of making a decision like that you're now left to basically play cleanup on aisle 5.
Yeah, well, absolutely, Griff. And this is very disturbing because, again, in terms of, following the law would say that if we're going to do a project on federal land, we've got to do consultation. And if you check in with anybody in Idaho, whether it's local ranchers, local communities, whether it's the state legislature, the congressional delegation, the governor, they all were writing letters, 100% writing letters in opposition to a project that was going to have hundreds of towers, each as tall as the Space Needle, shipping power on an expensive taxpayer-subsidized transmission line from Idaho to California. So the locals don't want it. Idaho didn't need the power, and everyone's opposed. But somehow the federal government under Biden gets it greenlit and approved in record time at the tail end of his administration, and ignoring the actual rules and regulations that say that you want to have consultation. Even on federal land, you want to consult with the people that live there before you start building stuff, and this was clearly ignored in this case.
Yeah, and Mr. Secretary, ignoring also the will of the people that actually live there and the voters and the constituents. Hey, let me ask you to look forward a little bit, if I can. Obviously, you ticked off a litany of things that you say President Trump's on a mission, and by all accounts, anyone observing this, it's certainly a mission. It's a bold and aggressive mission that he's on, and the accomplishments of just 200 days. Take me into the next 200 days. Where do you see things going? What goals and what sort of projects, accomplishments are you seeking to accomplish there at Interior?
Well, I think there was a couple of things, because in addition to Interior, President Trump asked me to chair the National Energy Dominance Council. Mm-hmm. And when we took a look at and this is a group that includes cabinet leaders, about 60% of the cabinet is on that group. So, Vice Chair Chris Wright, Lee Zeldin playing a key role, our trade team playing a key role. When I look ahead and you take a look at the trade deals that are being put together, which were in all cases leave us in a better spot than where we refer with countries whose markets were closed and ours were open to them. Now they're opening theirs up. But the core of almost all those deals is two things: investment by those countries into the United States, reshoring manufacturing, and also purchases of energy from the United States by those countries. So again, the strategy that one of the ways we achieve world peace is we sell energy to our friends and allies so they don't have to buy it from our adversaries. There's a big chunk of that. We've got to increase production and export more energy as part of these trade deals. But then when the dollars are coming into the country, we can use those for energy infrastructure, and we can not only, drill, baby, drill, but we can build, baby, build. And we've got to build out enormous capacity for producing electricity in this country. Our grid is at tremendous risk. We need more base load, less intermittent, unreliable, taxpayer subsidized. We need more base load, and that base load power can help us power the huge demand coming for artificial intelligence, the AI factories, where we take a kilowatt of electricity, we turn it into intelligence. A piece of electricity right now, a kilowatt, is worth more today than it ever has been in human history, because we've never been able to turn electricity into intelligence. And now we're able to do that. The demand for that capability is going to be cutting across every job, every industry, every company, hopefully across the government as well, because it'll help make the government more productive. But we've got to really get hustling, and that includes natural gas pipelines, power generation, more energy production, all those things. But the capital is going to be here. We're not short of money. The money's flowing into the country because of President Trump's negotiations and trade deals, and we're going to put that to work to build an energy powerhouse here. We lead China in the technology of advanced intelligence, artificial intelligence. We lead, but they're building out so much more electricity than we are. We're behind in that race, and that's a place where we've got to catch up.
Boy, that is so fascinating to hear you talk about, Mr. Secretary, because, you know, it wasn't just a few months ago as a reporter on Fox News. They'd sent me out there in Northern Virginia, just about 20 miles west of Washington, D.C., where one of the main AI power centers in the country is. And they're really, you know, working around the clock trying to build that base power up, because I don't think Americans fully realize the amount of power that it takes to drive these AI centers. And obviously, with what's on the horizon and staying competitive, like you said, with China, it's going to take a lot more. It seems that's going to be one of the biggest challenges you're facing right now.
Well, it sure is. And President Trump, again, any source of electricity that is, you know, reliable, persistent, and not heavily taxpayer subsidized like wind and solar, it is, you know, we're for it. I mean, whether it's nuclear, geothermal, hydro, natural gas, traditional sources like, you know, beautiful clean coal. And I say that because coal in America is, if you've got a coal plant running in America, it's clean. I mean, it's survived an onslaught of 20 years of regulations, and we've got enormous resources there, and we can take everything out of it that people want taken out of it, including, you know, even the CO2 if you wanted to. I mean, we can clean up everything related to coal, and in that coal, there's metallurgical coal, which we need for steel, and there's also critical minerals in the coal, which we need because China's got us in a stranglehold where they've cornered the market on the top 20 critical and rare earth minerals, which we need for defense, technology, automobiles, you know, virtually everything that's advanced in our country. So we've got another mission there from a national security to make sure that we're getting back in the businesses that include mining and critical minerals. I mean, we graduated 36,000 lawyers in this country last year, and we graduated 300 people with a mining or metallurgical degrees in this country.
We got to get that number up, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're a kid right now and you want to have, you know, I mean, you want to have career security, head into that field because, you know, the United States for the first time, we just made an investment. The Department of Defense made an investment in a public company, MP, Mountain Pass. These guys have a critical minerals mine on the California-Nevada border. I mean, the federal government, from a defense standpoint, is even saying we've got to take ownership in some of these countries. We've got to get back in the game. And, of course, in Interior, we're permitting gold mines, silver mines, cobalt mines, antimony, which we need for ammunition, uranium mines. I mean, we're importing uranium from Russia to run our current nuclear plants in this country. I mean, enriched uranium, we're buying it from Russia. How crazy is that?
It's crazy indeed. We've got to leave it there. Such great insight. He was the governor of North Dakota. We are fortunate to have him in the Trump administration now as our Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum. Mr. Secretary, thank you for taking time today, and have a great rest of your week.
You too. Great to be with you, Griff. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Giddy up, Griff Jenkins filling in for the great Brian Kilmeade on the Brian Kilmeade Show, and having the time of my life, and now having the opportunity to bring in a really good friend. And I am so fortunate to call her a friend because she is among, if not the smartest woman I know, certainly in Washington. And that is Mollie Hemingway. She and I actually are going to be on Outnumbered. You can catch us there. She will say smarter things. I will say dumber things, but at least I'll have the honor of sitting on the couch next to her. Hey, Mollie.
Stop. It's great to be here with you.
Well, no, I mean in every way. And you know, all know Mollie as a Fox News contributor because she does such a great job on the shows, but she's also the editor-in-chief of the Federalist. And her organization, the Federalist, has been the leader when it comes into finally uncovering the Russia hoax stuff, which, as we all now know, the recent history from D&I Gabbard releasing information that has led to referrals to the DOJ that has now led to a pretty significant subpoena being issued by House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer that has subpoenaed former President Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and a long litany of past and attorney generals and high-ranking officials with some connection to exactly what happened in the Federalist. And Mollie Hemingway have been on the tip of the spear with that. But Mollie, what I want to ask you is, you see MSNBC and other channels basically just blowing this off, saying this is all about nothing, but you say it's actually about something.
Well, it's just fascinating to see the same people who spent all day, every day, for like 2.5 years freaking out about supposed collusion between Trump and Russia. I mean, we endured years of hysteria from people. There was no leak too small to impugn Trump as being an agent of Russia. And now that it's all unraveling with truly explosive leaks of releases of real information that you can actually look at and check out and analyze. The media are saying, a lot of these left-wing media people are saying, oh, there's just nothing to see here. This is not interesting at all. And they're not serving their readers well, because there has been a grand jury impaneled to handle this investigation. There is a strike force at the DOJ that has already begun working on this. A strike force is what the DOJ uses to untangle really complex criminal conspiracies like the mafia. And so we also know, and we reported at the Federalist this week, that an unnamed U.S. attorney has been gathering documents, additional supporting documents, for those criminal referrals they received for Obama's top spy chiefs, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey. And so this is moving, and pretending that it's not happening is not a way to serve your readers or viewers.
Yeah, and I think, Mollie, for our listeners and viewers that have sort of been following this, even on the surface, you start to see that particularly guys like John Brennan and James Comey could have some real problems, particularly based on just the information we're able to see with our own eyes and statements they've made, in some cases under oath.
Well, this is, I would say in particular, it's interesting to think about John Brennan, the former CIA chief, because the documents that have been released and the whistleblowers that are coming forward are saying that good career bureaucrats in the intelligence agencies were screaming from the rooftops, you can't make this stuff up about Russia preferring Trump, when in fact the intelligence showed that Russia had no preference. They just wanted to mess with us. And also that Trump was colluding with Russia. You have good people screaming about it. They had their jobs threatened. They were told there was secret intelligence that they couldn't know about that John Brennan had. And because the conspiracy is ongoing, I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, you've had Brennan and Clapper and Comey saying that they're doing things to perpetuate that criminal conspiracy. And that is very bad news for them, because it means that the conspiracy is ongoing. And so if you're investigating these things, there's normally a 5-year statute of limitations. But they're continuing to perpetuate it, which means that we still aren't counting the clock on those 5 years. And so that makes them very legally vulnerable.
Well, and, the defenders of the Brennans and Comeys of the world are saying that this is all about political retribution, and they're scrapping for anything to try and do this, and that there's really nothing, there's no there. But you say there's maybe something there.
Yeah, so it's just absurd to say that, actually, and particularly after what the country endured under the Biden presidency, where you had literal raids of a former president's house and unfair lawsuits up and down the eastern seaboard. The reality is that what they did is extremely horrific. They tried to coup a duly elected president. They caused damaging relations on a global scale. The idea that nobody would be held accountable for knowingly suppressing the real intelligence and manufacturing fake intelligence, working with their handmaidens in the media, destroying the first Trump administration, destroying the lives and bankrupting people when they knew it was all a lie. They knew it was all a Clinton dirty op, and they knew there was nothing to it. The idea that you wouldn't hold people accountable is just you don't really have a country if you don't hold people accountable for this level of criminality.
And you do see in what has been released, and you know better than I, there's real connections with respect to Hillary Clinton, and in particular, one of her aides, basically showing that we can see that there was a narrative being created.
Oh, yeah. So some of this we've known, but we now see the actual details of it. I do think it's interesting that Clinton came up with this plan very early in her campaign, deployed it. We also knew at the end of the last Trump term that Russia got wind of this, but we have more details about how they got wind of this. Obviously, if Russia knew that Clinton was trying to do this, they had all sorts of opportunities to mess again with the election by deploying bad information. And rather than the FBI looking into this dirty trick or briefing Trump on what Clinton was planning, they investigated Trump and his campaign affiliates. That is just really reckless behavior and had so much to do with people's lack of trust in the FBI, CIA, and other spy agencies.
And sort of to that point, Mollie, I just happened to be filling in at the White House as the White House reporter that day, and we go into the briefing room, and then Tulsi Gabbard comes out, and I thought, oh boy, buckle up, we're in for something. And one of the things we learned just on that first day was that Russia didn't appear to specifically favor Trump in this election.
None of the intelligence showed that Russia favored Trump. The intelligence did show that Russia did not have a preference, that the goal of Russia was just to mess with us, to decrease trust in elections. And so what happened is that real intelligence, which was consistent throughout the presidential season, was suppressed. It was going to be briefed to Donald Trump and Mike Flynn as well as Obama. And they knew they couldn't run the whole hoax if the real information came out. So they suppressed the presidential daily brief. And then they came up with a plan to manufacture a fake intelligence assessment that said the opposite, that said that Russia preferred Trump. And they immediately, like the day they decided to do it, they immediately leaked to the Washington Post and the New York Times out and out lies claiming that the CIA had conclusively determined that Russia preferred Trump. You think about the Russia collusion hoax. A big part of it was that Trump colluded with Russia to steal the election. But you can't have him colluding to steal the election if Russia didn't prefer him. And so a big part of the lie was that they had to say Russia preferred Trump, even though the evidence never said that.
And let's walk this forward a little bit. And I don't want you to get ahead of any sort of reporting or scoops you've got coming from the Federalist. But, if indeed with Chairman Comer subpoenaing a former president, Bill Clinton in this case, former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, do we think they'll show where's this headed?
Well, I actually think the more important thing would be the grand jury and the strike force and the U.S. Attorney at the Department of Justice. This is the first time that we've had a really clear picture.
And by the way, it's important. I understand why you're pointing that out now, and I learn from you every time I talk to you. This is why, as I said in the open, you're the smartest gal I know, and I learned so much from you. The grand jury is significant because, as with most grand juries, the bar is pretty low for an indictment because the information is basically one-sided.
That's true, but it's more that they can actually just go get the information they need through subpoenas and allowing the subpoenas to proceed. Right now, we're in the phase where they're just collecting documents from the willing partners. They will be interviewing willing participants, the whistleblowers who have been desperate to tell anyone, who have tried quite hard to tell people for the last 8 years about what they went through when they tried to stop Brennan and company from doing this. Then once they've got all the documents and people, then they'll start going after people who were part of the criminal conspiracy, seeing what they have to say, seeing if they can share information about higher level targets. This could take time. I mean, this is how a criminal investigation that's this complex goes. And so people should not be expecting indictments anytime soon, or even necessarily expecting indictments, because I don't know who this U.S. attorney is, but if he's a good one, he or she will be looking at the evidence before making a decision about whether to indict anyone. And so that could take some time. But we're in a totally different environment than when we had that previous special counsel, John Durham. He was fighting everybody at the FBI. He was dealing with a hostile CIA. So he couldn't really get the information he needed, even as explosive as his report was.
So you say, don't expect anything quickly, but buckle up. We could see this actually continue to develop.
Yeah, and I think that's why also you're seeing a lot of people in the media and these other people a bit scared. When they say this is no big deal, what they're really saying is, we really messed up and we are scared and terrified. And so I would also say even some of the media participants in this, like, they had to have known that this wasn't a real story that they were pushing. And that might make even, claiming to be a journalist is not protection from taking part in a criminal conspiracy.
Yeah, and the White House is saying these people that won Pulitzer Prizes should be giving them back.
They of course should have. I mean, it's just, once you realize that Pulitzers are generally given for participation in information operations as opposed to journalism, you're not so surprised when you see them given that way. But they really did discredit the entire Pulitzer prize.
I predict they won't give them back.
No, I do
but
not.
Listen, Mollie Hemingway, continue to follow her on the Federalist and of course on Fox. You'll see the two of us on Outnumbered. Mollie, it's great to have you here. I'll let you get ready and I'll see you on Outnumbered soon enough.
See you soon.